This is Julia with iCadenza, and I'm here with Ann Marie Calhoun, who is a rock violinist and also a singer, composer, and a true jack of all trades when it comes to music. I'm so thrilled to talk to you about everything that you do.
Well, thank you for the very sweet introduction. I'm happy to share my thoughts and my experiences with you today.
Thank you. Now, you've done some incredible things. Let's start at the very beginning, though. How did you first get started in music?
Well, I started at the tender age of 3. Like many violinists, I did the Suzuki method and infused that with some other influences. My father is a folk musician, and so I learned how to play fiddle and grew up in 2 divergent traditions of classical music and also folk music. And that was the beginning of a career that's always tried to complement and incorporate other styles of music with classical music.
What I find really fascinating is your story for how you started singing and doing all the other wonderful things that you do.
Well, I think one of the joys about playing is that you always accept challenges and that you look for those challenges and you look for courage within. And I had this opportunity to play with a Beatle and to do it with a legendary songwriter and performer, Dave Stewart, as well. And the fact that I didn't play guitar or sing didn't stop me. I thought, I can do this, I can learn. And so for 2 weeks, I practiced guitar intensively, learned all my bar chords, and I grew calluses upon callus, and had my premiere live on Larry King with a Beatle and Dave Stewart playing guitar by my side. And it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. It was the start of a reinvention of myself as a rock violinist.
So incredible. Were you scared?
The thing about performance anxiety is that the thrill of the moment is so much greater than any fear that you might have. Of course, when you're preparing, there's that nagging doubt that you've gotten yourself into something that's bigger than you can handle. But within music, there's always an element of spontaneity, and within that spontaneity, you realize your passion and your joy for creating music, and that, for me, always trumps any anxiety in performance.
What's the most thrilling part of a performance for you? Is it the communication with the audience, or is it the music itself and expressing it?
There's so many different contexts for performance. There's the performance where you're in your living room playing for your family members and your friends, and then there's larger performances where you're playing rock arenas and you have thousands of people in the audience, and then there's performance in front of a video camera where you know that millions of people are going to watch it later. So there's so many different types of performance, and the rewards, I think, are different. But the one common reward that I see in all those performances is that I'm usually communicating with another musician, and it's that dialogue that happens in the moment that's so special that I always realize that I need to take advantage of, that in-the-moment connection.
I actually saw you perform recently where you were doing some improvisation on stage. And I think that's one of the hardest things for a lot of musicians, to just let go and see where the music takes you. How do you approach improvising on stage?
Improvising is something that's kind of considered a dark art, like you were saying. It's not something that's taught to us. And it's something that you have to just take leaps of faith. You have to just jump into the deep end. For me, musical thoughts come to me spontaneously, and the platform to act on those spontaneous thoughts and to realize them is just wonderful. It's kind of like, imagine having a ton of ideas that you just can't wait to share with somebody, and you have the telephone in your hand and someone says, okay, you can make as many calls as you want now, you can share those ideas. That's what improvisation is to me. I have ideas, and when somebody gives me the platform to express those musically, I'm just overjoyed.
So as you move forward in your career, how do you decide what's going to be the next project you're going to take on?
Well, I was talking a little bit about courage earlier and spontaneity. The things that I love in my projects is I always look for something that's going to allow me to be courageous, something that's going to allow me to be spontaneous, something that's going to allow me to explore, and something that I'm passionate about. So I look for those 4 elements. Whenever those 4 elements are in place, the project is something that grows me and something that I enjoy, and hopefully something that brings something great into the world. The project that I'm most passionate about right now is a documentary I'm making on the Stradivarius violin. And recently I had the honor of performing with Elizabeth Pitcairn, who owns the red violin, Stradivarius. And seeing that instrument just got me thinking about how the Stradivarius represents just ubiquitous quality craftsmanship, and there's a lot of mystery and value, and it's something that's just entrenched within the classical tradition. These instruments have stories. They're famous. They're the rock stars of the classical instrument world. And so I started thinking about what I would have to do to get a Stradivarius violin. And just, it's so incredible that these instruments are so prohibitively expensive that the people who play them don't even own them, that you rely on patrons to get these instruments. And so I started thinking, there's 600 Stradivari violins out there. Who owns them? Who plays them? And suddenly all these questions came into my mind. And just the Stradivarius foundations that are out there, and the young artists who are playing them, and then also the controversy of an alternative violinist playing on an iconic classic instrument started to kind of hit me. So right now my documentary is going to be a quest to get a Stradivarius, and hopefully it ends with a happy, I get a Stradivarius and I get to evolve the instrument. And if it doesn't end with that, I think it'll be an interesting journey as well, just discovering the roots of the instrument, who plays them, and learning a little bit more about the instrument that inspires me every day.
It's so interesting because people, I don't think, realize how much of an effect the instrument itself has on the sound that it creates. They just think it's all about the musician, but it's really not. It's a combination of the two.
Absolutely. The violin is an extension of the musician, and it's responsible for at least 50%, possibly more, of all of our efforts and all of our creativity. And that it's likened to a marriage when you find your instrument, and I can vouch for that. The instrument that you play definitely defines the musician that you are.
And you talked about being concerned that, playing alternative music on such an instrument, what are the ramifications of that? What does that really mean? Do you ever feel that people might be judging you for choosing to go the alternative route, so to speak? And do you ever judge yourself in any kind of way? Well,
when you learn different traditions, you also learn that there are purists of these traditions. And as somebody who's dabbled in so many traditions, in addition to doing folk music, I've also studied jazz, I've studied different world musics, I've done rock music, I've dabbled in a lot of different worlds. And the purists of these worlds are very afraid of the value of their art being diluted by influences from other arts and other forms and other approaches. I've had classical violin teachers who were so worried that my fiddling would affect my bow grip, or that, or even folk musicians who thought that all of my classical training would make my fiddling sound less impassioned and less authentic and raw. So I've seen it from both sides. And being in the middle and being the one experiencing these traditions, I see how exploration actually complements your style and gives you a new way to communicate that's unique. So within the combination of traditions, I think there is a unique voice that emerges. And an instrument like the violin is something that has such a beautiful tradition. And I think that combining tradition with new techniques and new styles, actually it bridges the tradition into something beautiful, and it preserves the tradition, because you're always referring back to it and being true to your study of that pure form. So I believe the opposite. I believe that studying other types of music and combining it with your classical background and technique actually bring classical playing to a new level and preserve the tradition.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Thanks.
So let's switch gears just a little bit and talk about the promotional aspects of being an artist. And we were talking a little bit about that before this interview. What do you think an artist needs to do to get their art out there these days?
Well, we live in a world now where multi-platform is the key to survival. In order to network yourself as a musician, it's important to do the traditional methods, which are going out and performing live and meeting people in the concert halls and doing it the old-fashioned way. But there are so many platforms available now, the social networking that you can do through Twitter or MySpace or Facebook. It's kind of the go-to way right now. If you don't have a MySpace page, you don't exist in the music world, it seems, or a web page. So it's something that's essential for survival. And we also, I think, are in a very, very unique time now where other platforms are available that are non-traditional. For example, I created a record with Nokia, the cell phone conglomerate, as my record label and distributor.
Wow.
And what we did was Tim Kring, the creator of Heroes, the television show, had an idea for a narrative, a storyline that he wanted to launch in a unique multi-platform way through cell phones, actually. So partnering with Nokia and also with a charity called Room to Read, we created a record that had clues in the record that would allow people to find out more about the storyline. And then we took the music and my character as an actress and filmed the story, which took place in London and in Zambia, and created a scavenger hunt using video drops in London. So participants were able to use their Nokia cell phone devices, go to specific locations, point and click, and get a video drop that would give them a bit of the story and then take them to a new location where they could get the next bit of the story. So an interactive cell phone using brand new technology, point and click technology, or point and find technology, and delivering it through a cell phone company I thought was really unique. And mobile entertainment devices are the future. So having your music and your identity and your profile being advertised by a cell phone company, I thought was a good move and a new way to break out into new platforms.
That's incredible. That sounds like a really fantastic thing, just both for as a promotional tool for the company and for you, of course, and just the idea of merging music with other forms of entertainment, really.
Yeah.
So that's really wonderful.
I'm enjoying the adventure, and I'm learning a lot every day.
Now, you were talking a little bit about what you think about iCadenza. Would you be willing to share some of those thoughts now?
Sure. iCadenza, I think, is providing such a valuable service to classical musicians everywhere by letting them know the importance and also the accessibility now of social networking and using technology to promote and distribute and get information out to a public that's very eager to learn. We were talking earlier about purists within a tradition, and classical music is something that is very, very traditional on a lot of levels, not just the instruments that are being played, but the way that the music is distributed seems to still be on a more traditional level, and bringing out blogs and encouraging classical musicians to engage with technology is something that is going to bridge the gap.
How are you able to be authentic and yet still express yourself through things like social media? I think a lot of artists have that question, that they struggle with creating a personal identity that is authentic but is shareable, so to speak.
Right. Well, I'd struggle with that as well. I feel like whenever you try to express yourself online, it's always going to be a lesser expression of your true and complete whole identity in person and live. I think that if somebody were to look at me online, they would get a lot of facts of me, they would see pretty pictures of me, but the depth of what I want to do and what I'm passionate about and the way I sound live can never be captured on that. But the way I look at it is it's better than nothing. And if you give them the information to learn about you, then they're empowered to come find you and to really learn who you are. And actually, I think maybe that's what the heart of social networking is providing that breadcrumb and that clue that makes people interested in learning more about you.
What have been some of the challenges that you faced in pursuing this career?
For me, I really very, very much reinvented myself to come out here to Hollywood and be a rock violinist. Not long ago, 5 years ago, I was a conceptual physics and chemistry teacher at an all-boys boarding school. I also directed the orchestra and played a ton of violin at the time with different bands and also on my own. So it wasn't that big of that big of a leap. But for me, just taking those courageous steps and believing that you can do it. I think that the educational system today de-emphasizes the validity of cultural arts and studying music as being a valid career path. And I know that I had all the tools given to me to succeed as a violinist when I was very young, and I doubted those. I doubted them completely and became a science school teacher because I didn't think that I had what it took to be a violinist. And I'm happy to have gotten over that and taken the courageous leap into the unknown. So I think it's the biggest challenge is yourself. It's your own perception and your own insecurities. So my advice is get over it. Just do it.
That's really, really great advice. I think it's so inspiring to see someone who's been so brave consistently through so many experiences. I think you really represent courage, and I think that's really, really exciting, and I just can't wait to see what you'll do next.
Thank you. Oh, I can't wait to do it.